to this storytelling for designers. So this session has happened on ADP List platform, but I forgot to press the recording. So I hope that this, my reenacting version, would still provide you all the necessary information you feel like you want to be back to. Let's start with a fun exercise. This is what I like to do before any session. So on this screen, you see these two cards. Those cards could be, for example, for the food delivery app, and they have the photo, the name of the product, and the description. The only thing is different is indeed this description. So you can type in comments or just keep it to yourself which option seems more attractive to you. I would mind you there is no right or wrong answer, but I hope that we will be able, just a few slides later, to be able to look at this example again, and we will see what makes them so different, these two approaches. What happens when we read description for the food? We understand the ingredients, flavors, and textures of the food, we make more informed decisions, and we appreciate the food more, and it will help us to enjoy this a bit more. It creates a bit better experience. So hi everyone, welcome to the Storytelling for Designers, or anyone. I crossed it out because I think that the things I'll be talking about today are useful for a lot of people from different professions. However, the examples I will be giving you are based on the design cases. A little bit more about myself. My name is Yulia Kucherenko, but you can call me Julia. I'm a self-taught designer with 5+ years in the field. I have actually a radio engineering technical degree, so I think the combination of this technical background and this pretty creative and people-oriented field, this is what creates this very nice combination where I try to analyze all the things, how to improve all the things. At least I think so. My main interests are product design and management. However, besides the work, I like to listen to music, create music, read books, take photos. Anything to keep that work-life balance. These session goals are learn more about why do we need stories at all, ingredients of the good storytelling, and providing the storytelling for the design, which means working all the things I just mentioned, but in terms of the design examples. Before we will start talking about anything, we need to come to the middle ground about what is the story. Please take a look at this picture. We see the picture, which contains for the left part, right part. It has a nice zoom into our character. And my question here is, do you see the story here? Do you hear the story? Probably. Well, here's one of the definitions I found over the Google. There are millions of them, but this one kind of spoke to me the most. Story is a telling of an event, either true or fictional, in such a way that the listener experiences or learns something by just the fact that they heard the story. This definition is a little bit limited to the hearing and saying type of representing the story, but what I like about this the most, that this is the experience, and you will share the experience and another person will feel it, consume it. This is what the story is about. So I think that you watching on this slide, on this picture, actually heard the story in your head. You kind of have sort of narrative. What I don't know, whether you had the events before this picture and this is where you arrive, or maybe this picture is in the middle of a longer story and you will have a much more events after that. Stories could be complex. And by starting learning how to improve storytelling, we will have to learn about how to improve stories. But to know how to improve stories, we need to know key elements of the story to know what to improve. Stories have 5 key elements. Those are plot, setting, characters, point of view, and conflict. We'll be taking a look at all these 5 key ingredients on this example with this obviously cute dog in the middle of the fire. The first one is the plot. The plot, I will move myself to here. Okay, cool. Plot is the basically plot is how your events will turn out. Plot is usually a logical thing with the progression. So we arrive to the scene, we have some sort of description, but then things will get fired up. We have some sort of climax and then some sort of satisfaction or a conclusion while we resolve the conflict. I think in this picture we're arriving at the climax, where the primary turning point in what your story has been building towards to, because we see this dog sitting in the fire. Fire takes time, right, to be that bad, and we see these gases above the dog. So the situation is pretty critical. You wouldn't expect any livable character to just sit down in the middle of the flames and be like, okay, right? This is why it makes the meme, because you would expect the dog, to panic, to run away, but then we zoom to this dog and it says, this is fine. This is why it creates the meme, because we're obviously arriving at the climax and we expect the character to do any sort of changes. So the next is the setting. Setting is both the physical location and point in time in which your plot takes place. We see that this dog is inside. We cannot tell whether it's home, bar, or whatever, but it's inside. And I mean, this is what adds to the plot, because fire inside is dangerous. And time, climax, everything is on fire, literally and figuratively. So the next part is the characters. Characters could be people, animals, beings, or personified objects driving your story. We have here the animal, but also characters are divided by two main groups, I would say. Those are the protagonist and antagonist. The protagonist is like the good person in your story that will try to overcome the conflict and have the happy ending. And the antagonist is the character that will try to make sure that the protagonist never succeeds. They will always try to make the mess. The next part of the story and key ingredient is the point of view. There could be points of view in terms of first person, second person, and third person. This is where we start to different. Maybe you have this narrative right now in your head where you say, oh, this is me and my deadlines. So you just told the story from the first person of view. I'm saying this dog is sitting in the middle of the fire, so I'm telling you the story from the third person of view. This could be beneficial level to improve the empathy of the listeners to your story, but we will be touching that a little bit later. And the final ingredient of the story, my favorite one, is the conflict. Conflict is basically towards what all your story gravitates. I mean, the conflict, this is why we like stories. We want to hear the conflict and hear the resolution of the conflict. Conflicts could be character versus self, versus another character, versus nature, and versus society. Here, again, it will depend on your narrative. Maybe if you say like me and my deadlines, you have the character versus self, because obviously like you have to work with like procrastination kind of thing. Or maybe you were saying something, oh, this is the dog sitting in the modern economy with modern taxes. So you have the conflict character versus society, right? So this is the fifth, I think, and the most interesting key element of the story. So now when we see all the story on the example of this meme, we'll have to jump deep to the why brains love stories. I'm sorry in advance, these slides will have a lot of text information just because I want to give you the most correct information. So why brains love stories? When you hear or see a really compelling story, your brain participates in a phenomenon known as narrative transportation. Narrative transportation is the extreme case of storytelling experience. So I hope that all of you had this at least once in your life. When you read the book so good, or you enjoyed the movie so much, or you played the video game with such a great plot that you kind of lost the track of time. You kind of wasn't there where you are. You was in the story. You fully belonged in there. So this is the narrative transportation, the ultimate experience of the story. By learning this edge case, we will be able to see what makes the brain hooked to the stories, even though we will take a look at the more like middle ground level of stories in the design terms, but it's still very important for us to learn the chemistry behind all of this. The disengagement of the senses is exactly why brains love stories so much. They cause real and measurable reactions in your brain's connections in chemistry. I mean, you should have something going on in order to experience such an extreme form of experiencing this story. To tell you how important the chemistry is and why it's so addictive to hear the stories, please take a look at this slide. Here we see the cute capybara with two little ducks. I hope that you felt at least 1% of any sort of emotions, at least like how cute is this, right? This was the chemistry in your brain for free. You're welcome. This is how it's important. This is why we like stories. We want to experience them. This is why we'll look at the memes and listen to the music, to have this experience, to feel it. It's nice. So the two parts of your brain the most engaged by stories are the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. Prefrontal cortex will analyze stories in terms of facts, logic, sequences, etc. The amygdala, though, will take all these facts that been analyzed by prefrontal cortex and will start code this information with the emotion you felt while you heard to these facts. And this is what will help to process this story to the long-term memories. I think all of us had this experience at the school, university, or college where you've been on a lecture, but the person that's been telling you the story was a bit too dry. They've been saying all the facts, and it was hard to listen to this lecture. It was hard to remember this lecture because they didn't engage nothing emotional. However, I hope you had the opposite experience with the great teacher where they would use real life examples, where they would engage with you and other people, and it will create a much more nice storytelling during the lecture, so it will be easier to listen to it, but also it'll be easier to remember it afterwards, because by using the emotions you help to increase the chances that this information will be stored to the long-term memories. We love stories because they are engaging instruments that deliver information beyond flat stats and facts. In addition, stories have this unique capability to drive empathy and the release of the oxytocin in the brain. Again, chemicals, happy, everything's good. Let's go back to this first example before the session with these two cards. Now, I hope you will be able to differentiate these cards a bit more. The first one is a bit more concise. It's very factual. I mean, margarita and what it consists of. The second one, though, definitely involves more emotions. Classic Italian pizza with a thin and crispy crust. So you may be gravitating towards the second option. However, some people may still prefer the more factual ones. This will depend really on the person. It's a very unified and personified experience. However, here's the third version. I actually asked the AI to write the poem about Margarita. And maybe some people will say, this is better, right? Like the poem about Margarita. Pizza Margarita, so delicious and divine, a cheesy delight that's sure to tantalize. I mean, all of us different. But here's where I also want to include the context that people will perceive the facts versus emotions not only based on their personal experiences and opinions, but also we can see some sort within nationwide, right? So take a look at this picture. This is the photo from the Japanese bus, and this is the stop button, like when you request the stop. I mean, you see here is 3 lines of text, so obviously it says a bit more than just request the stop. It says, if you'd like to request the stop, please press this button. Well, in most countries, maybe where you're from, you will usually see just the stop sign or request stop. But here's where we start to have this context on the nation level. Maybe they need a bit more context, maybe they need a bit more facts, maybe they need a bit more emotions. Another example of this is that some airlines such as Air France and Lufthansa do not have the 13th row. This is because in a lot of countries, the number 13 may be considered an unlucky number. And in some countries, Lufthansa doesn't have the 17th row because Italy and Brazil, they consider the unlucky number 17th. Why is it important? You may be telling your friend some factual information, like I'm living on the 13th floor, but they may be reacting to it differently and say to you something, aren't you worried? So even though you thought you provided more factual information, you may still already like turn on some emotional reaction in the people just by learning this more context. And now we'll give you another type of context, why it's important to give the context. So take a look at this slogan for this company. Slogans are a very extreme form of the storytelling because you have to include it with a few sentences, so many things. What is your company about? What do you do? Why you're so creative? What customers can expect? So it's a very, very complicated task. So this company slogan is experience you need, results you want. Personally, for me, that didn't provide a lot of information. I really didn't know how to treat this information, whether it's a good slogan or not. But can you guess what this company does? Or like what the field they're working in? So actually they're working in the law and digital rights. And now maybe when you know this context, you maybe start experiencing these phrases a bit different. Experience you need, results you want. Like of course you want like certain results, you want to win the case in the court, etc. So by just giving you a bit of this context, you maybe start to treating these like words and having a bit of a different story in your mind. So context is important. Now when we know why Prem loves stories, we may start talking about how to improve stories. I will be giving you some just general advices, and after that we'll be having the first like real case, how to use all that we just learned on this like design example. So how to improve stories. The first is create and use recognizable characters. It's important to use familiar descriptions and imagery and avoid characters that could feel exclusionary and cause the disconnect between the learner and the content. Your character must be believable. People must be able like to empathize with them. So this is the important part. The second option, how to improve the stories, is to work on the plotline and journey. There's essentially this template for the plotline where we have the exposure at first, where we just provide the information, but then things will get like heated up until we have a certain climax of the conflict where things go just south, and then we would have this satisfactorily last point in the plotline, and this is actually where you would like to put your presentation. So we will be talking that after one step after that. So the plotline must follow that principle because this is what we usually like aim to. Like we want things to go bad, and then here's the amazing solution, amazing design. So keep in mind the plotline and journey. The third is, I think it derives from the previous two, emotional connection. Brains naturally crave connection and they want to create a connection. So make sure that you show in your like characters, users, recognizable pain points, etc. So that people would be able to use that emotional part of the brain in order to experience your story better. The fourth one is the satisfying conclusion. So this is what I was telling you, that at the end of every story, there's supposed to be satisfying conclusion. I mean, if you're the creative writer, of course, it could be like the open-ended story or something else. But in terms of like this professional setting, like telling stories for different people about design or other things, we will usually have satisfying conclusion in the end. And this satisfying conclusion, this is usually what you would present. Like, for example, you present your design, right? And it will be like, so the user, they had this problem and they was like so sad about it, but this is why we have this app. Your app, your design, your product, your solution, a satisfying conclusion. Because this is what you've been working towards, like solving this conflict, solving this problem. Satisfying conclusion, you just presented it. And the fifth option to improve stories is just from me. I mean, it's not like it's a certain point to follow, but just keep the casual event structure. Make sure that the stories you work with are coherent, logical. It doesn't mean that they have to be linear, but just make sure that they are still like up to understanding by other people. Now we know all of this, let's take a look at the real example from the design and see how this new knowledge may improve things that we do from day to day. We'll take a look at the user persona. This is the concept in the design field, where you would basically create archetypes of different personas that use your product. I mean, here's how it sounds: archetypical users whose goals and characteristics represent the needs of a larger group of users. In simpler terms, if we have the food delivery app, you may have the persona like a person who creates the order. You may have the person who delivers the order. Also, you will have the person like the restaurant is still user persona, who will take the order and cook the food. And you also may have like somebody like a support or service or something like that. So those are user personas. Here's the user persona. I found that description over the internet. I think it's a pretty good one, a pretty solid one. But we have the user persona. His name is John Shaw. He's 34 years old. He is married. He has a child, and he has his own business. So this is the interesting part for us. Because of that business, he has certain pain points. So he's not great at accounting, and he's getting lost while following the money he spends and earns. Also, he needs to answer is how much profit he makes at the end of the month, and he has to spend a lot of time to make an efficient analysis, all because of that business. And he has certain needs, like he wants more time with his family. And I mean, this is why we start to see like he has the pain point, like he has to spend a lot of time to do the analysis, and he wants like more time with his family. And probably John possibly would benefit from the product that will handle the analysis of his income. We will take right now at this persona card, and we will try to use the ingredients of the story, and you will see how by just improving the story, this will have the effect not only on the storytelling you do, but also on the design decisions you make and design solutions you provide. So plot here, I think we arrive at a very nice point at the exposition. We learn more about the background of the user. We have his description, his life. He's the business owner. He's the business owner, I think, like for 3 years. I think it's a very nice plot. We kind of get it. And he has problems and he wants to solve them. Pretty good. The setting here, this is where I would actually personally just would like to see a bit more information. Setting is the both physical location and point in time in which your plot takes place. This is the point where it would be nice to know like whether John like he sits with his laptop at his bookstore, like his business, or he's doing it at home, or he likes to use the mobile phone. Like that would give us ideas about like this physical location that he's working in. Or maybe he's the person who does this only like once per month, or maybe he's the person who like constantly checks this. So like this setting, he's like his behavior and place will help us to learn more about how we may support this person better. So this was the setting. The next one is the character. I think it's a pretty good one. We definitely have the protagonist. He wants to overcome his problems. We kind of empathize with him. So I think it's pretty solid in here. So point of view. We use here the third point of view because we describe how John Shaw is, but every user persona is always built on the research. So you have to go and speak with a lot of people, make a lot of interviews to have the correct personas for your product. And sometimes what we can do as designers, maybe like other people, you may start to include the quotes from the user interviews or even snippets from the video interviews to include that first point of view. Why it's cool and why it works sometimes, because it obviously starts to create more emotional connection and may sometimes help other people empathize more, because we definitely as designers and just in general we want product managers, developers, designers to be all empathetic toward the people we're creating products for. So sometimes playing with the point of view could be a nice addition. The last one, my favorite, conflict. Here's where I personally like information the most. For example, conflict character versus self. So we've seen this phrase that John Shaw has problem with the accounting, but why is that? Maybe he's good with numbers, or maybe he procrastinates. So it would be nice to learn more about his needs and how this product may access these needs. Or maybe he has like a classic character versus society, because he's a business owner. He has all the things going on in his life, and he needs to submit different reports, pay taxes. So maybe this is the character versus society. And answering these questions will also have the impact on the product and design. So right now, by just like asking this certain point, like certain key elements of the story, we analyze the user persona and found out where we may do additional research to improve the design, to improve the product. So nevertheless, I still think it's a very good example, but by just doing these simple steps, we kind of improve the user persona. Um, the key point in creating user personas is working with real people. Obviously, you have to do tons of research on your real potential customers. I just want to put this out loud one more time. But yeah, this is it basically. Again, I will repeat through things how to improve the story. Again, you can also apply it to this user persona. Keep the recognizable characters, and the more research you will do, the easier it's gonna be, because it will use like actual facts, so your person will be recognizable. Keep in mind the plotline and journey. For that, like regarding the these previous steps, keep in mind like the setting and the conflict, also the emotional connection. Absolutely right. Satisfying conclusion, and keeping casual event structure. However, sometimes I just want to add this. Sometimes user personas in your project may look like not like the previous example. In my projects, I usually kind of use this more lean user persona. We don't have like the photos, the names, the age, but we have like all these portrait of their needs, pain points, of the jobs they do within the product. And you may call this persona like small business owner already in the field, for example. Or maybe you will have like small business owner who just starting with the business, and those personas are going to be super different. They will have absolutely different pain points and needs. And I mean, it's up to the product to learn with which personas they work. We'll keep on going with the examples. So this is the screenshot from the Behance. Behance is the website where a lot of designers share a lot of their work. You can find almost any design here. So this was the example from the UI UX design. And this is the screenshot I took from the case by the designers. I think at the top we had like a picture of some sort of like this app, like mobile with something. And that was the first screen with the text. I think it's incredible because it gives us so much about the stories that it will be easier for us to analyze what we see down the pictures about all these design decisions, wireframes, flows, etc. So it says, Be Better app is a tool that allows you to build new good habits and reach goals. You can track the progress of each goal and see overall statistics for different periods of time. The app offers an intuitive design, so you will be able to start planning in seconds. I think it's a very great start point. I mean, we have the plot, we definitely exposed to all the data, we have the setting, it's obviously some sort of mobile device that will be with you at all times, whenever you are, so you will be able to work with different habits. We have the character, protagonist, obviously, a person who wants to overcome some sort of challenges and become a better version of themselves. And actually, I will jump to the conflict. We have the conflict character versus self, because this person will have to overcome like procrastination or maybe some other things to become the better version. And the point of view here, we have the second point of view, because they say you can build new good habits. This is actually a very cool case of making sure that you will empathize more, because they kind of try to speak with you and with your problems. Maybe you are the person who wants to build new good habit and reach goals. Now we'll take a look at an example at another Behance case where there was none other information, and I will try to explain why it makes hard reading that case and looking at these designs a bit more complicated. This is this case. I mean, this is the first picture on this work. I mean, it's stunning, right? It's a very great example of the UI. We see wonderful screens, wonderful color palettes, amazing fonts. And when you scroll down this case, this is the first info you get. It's in the end. Hello friends, take a look at my new design concept for the cryptocurrency app. I mean, it's great, but the thing is, it's hard. Like, how am I supposed to treat these designs? Because we, as I said, we present things at this conclusion, and it's supposed to be like, oh, satisfaction, conclusion. And I don't know the story, so I cannot tell you are those screens are conclusive. It is the end of the story. So here, the person that was creating this design, I would advise this to whether like product designer, UX designers, UI designers, you want to present your work at this most final juicy step. But before that, you need to add this information so that people would know the story. I mean, introducing the recognizable characters. I mean, it would be nice to know whether this app is for people who are super new to the crypto, or maybe they're already in the business like for a couple of years. It would be nice to know also the plotline and journey. What is the conflict for these people? Maybe they have too many wallets or something else, and this is how you would be able to treat these designs. Like, oh, it solves this, very nice, right? I mean, it would also help create a more emotional connection, actually both between designers and crypto fans, because designers would empathize more about which design decisions you made. This is the first one. And the second one, people who like enter the crypto, maybe they will see and they will be like, oh, I'm the new one and this tool does this and that, I would like to try it. So it's like a win-win situation. Also, satisfying conclusion. Your design is supposed to arrive at the funniest part, like, yes, this is the conclusion. Let's take a look again at this example. Now, when you know the story, or if you would know the story, it would be easier to treat these designs with more sense. Oh, yes, like I see, you can do that for that user. Oh, it's such a nice design decision. This is what will kind of improve your storytelling by just improving the story. You will just like add these elements, and here we go, you have the better storytelling. So now we spent so much time talking about stories, key ingredients, how to improve stories, that we have to go back to the topic of this session, is the storytelling. And well, storytelling is simple. It's the art to tell stories in order to engage the audience. I hope you're not surprised with that. I just think that first step is improving the stories, and then doing the storytelling part would be a bit more easier, or at least you will have more success in your pocket already. But here are some examples that you can actually use for the storytelling, which are very valid. The first one is why before what. Something that we just saw in the Behance examples. You would better provide as much context as possible so that people would know how to treat the decisions you show. I mean, as much as possible. Another example from the Behance, the first screen of this case, and we already see the aircraft tracking app, millions of users plan trips with planes live and get to update information on flights, airports, weather, and flight delays worldwide online. And by looking at the next screens, it would be easier for you to get to know, like, oh, this is how they decided that, this is how they decided that. The story flows, which is nice. I mean, we love stories, happy chemicals. Next thing is engage the emotions of the stakeholders. Stakeholders, in this term, I mean anyone to whom you will be presenting your story. That could be your colleagues and other designers, developers, or maybe some key level management, stakeholders. Those are some examples that you may be keeping in your head to use for the storytelling. What may stakeholders be thinking and feeling? What are their values? What do they do currently know and believe? What demands and constraints are they facing? Who are their stakeholders? Also, I would like to add a very important thing. Everything that you wouldn't provide, that you wouldn't say, would be thought by these people. And this is one of the main sources of conflicts and misalignments, because sometimes people are talking about same things but using different words, or sometimes people use same words but talking about different things. And I will right now provide you the shortest example of it just in a minute. So please imagine the chair. I mean, the piece of the furniture, just the chair. You can sit in it, you can stand in it, but imagine the chair, okay? You have this picture. Was it this chair? I would be bold to say that actually a lot of you probably imagined a different type of chair. Maybe you imagined the armchair, or maybe your chair was from the metal, or maybe it was like silky, velvety with a lot of cushions. So just because I didn't provide you enough context and I was like already starting presenting something, everyone could be misaligned at this point because everyone would be thinking about different chairs at this point of presentation. Also, there's another concept that is linked to this one. This is the post that I saw by Nick Black at LinkedIn, and he basically says and talks about suitcase words. These are the words that mean nothing on their own, and they need unpacking to understand their meaning. Those words could be like value, lean, agile, efficient, growth. Same with this chair. Like you will say the word value, and trust me, every person will think about different types of value. So this is very important to say these things out loud so that everyone would be hearing at least the same story as much as possible. Another advice is basically to practice often. Practice makes perfect. By practicing a lot, you will learn how to correct the breathing, how to use your voice, like when to use high notes, when to use low notes, how much to gesture, how much not to gesture. And basically, this is the practice that will make these things better and better eventually. The last advice is be authentic and add glitter. What do I mean by that? If you will Google 10 most greatest storytellers of all time, you will see the list of the people. And of course, you can learn from them, you can be inspired by them, you can take their techniques. So you will be adding this glitter to your style of storytelling. Or we would also try to compensate the differences we have. So for example, I'm a very energetic person and I have to calm myself down during presentations. Some people may have the contrary problem. Maybe they're too calm and they may have to introduce more emotion to the storytelling style. So this is what I mean by add glitter, but still be authentic. There is no need to try and to be someone else. Like if you would try to make presentations like Steve Jobs, like copy him like one-to-one, it actually wouldn't work because you're not Steve Jobs. But this is the great news. You are you, and you have your own vision and your own experiences that you can be sharing with all of us. I will leave you with that picture, and I hope that right now when you take a look at this picture, you maybe start to thinking about much more complexes of the storytelling and stories. Maybe right now you will be thinking, oh, is this the picture like at the beginning of the events, of the middle of the events? Is this the end of this story? Where is this happening? Who are the characters? How to make it more empathetic? How to induce more emotions? What are the facts here? So many nuances. And again, those aren't strict rules. It's just like some of the guidance. Again, all of us are unique and all of us will have a different style of story making and storytelling. Thank you so much for your attention. You can find me as Yulia Kucherenko at LinkedIn and ADP List. I hope to find you at the next sessions. Have a nice one. Bye.